and welcome to the Skating Lesson Podcast. I'm Jennifer Kirk, a former U.S. ladies competitor and a 3-time world team member.
I'm David Leese. I'm a figure skating blogger and adult skater, and this week I brought Jennifer Kirk into the world of a die-hard skating fan.
I am such a fangirl. I was such a fangirl. I was like tweeting with everybody. I loved it. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it in this recap show. We have to discuss the men because that was really the event of the competition. So Dave, everybody's talking about Patrick Chan's victory. I want to know from you, what do you think about the judging? What do you think about how it portends where the sport is heading? What do you think needs to change? And just what was your take on the top two, Chan versus 10?
I'm sweating a little bit.
You're pinned out.
I'm pinning out. The words of Rudy Galindo. Oh, man. The judging, the men's event. You know, I'm in my heart of hearts. Mm-hmm. I'm really honestly glad that it happened. And it's not that I'm happy that I feel that Dennis 10 didn't win. I'm happy.
Do you think, like an addict, we have finally reached bottom? Do you think this is bottom?
I think this is like coming to bottom. Because I think like we've been discussing this throughout the season. And first of all, before we even get into this judging, we were watching figure skating, an event that is very popular in Canada on Latvian television. There was no Canadian feed online. We were watching this. We became very Latvian. I feel like my passport got stamped this week. We visited Latvia and it was wonderful. So we talk about there's that situation, which I think ties into the judging, actually. In 2002, which all led to the new judging system, we thought we had hit bottom because, oh my goodness, the world was ending. If you watch that 2002 pairs broadcast on NBC or the other networks around the world, the Canadians obviously didn't win that night. And the announcers were so upset and so erupting. And the world was ending. Sandra Bezic was embarrassed for the sport, yada, yada. You know, the news programs. It was an international outrage. And if you look at it, there were a couple of baubles that the Russians had in that performance. There were like a few minute baubles, you know, Anton Sikorlitsa on one of the jumping passes. And that was outrageous. And really a lot of people felt that Berezhnaya and Sikorlitsa had the superior skating skills, that they had it, and that they were superior to the Canadians. And it only took a couple little baubles. Fast forward 11 years to the World Championships on Latvian television. And Patrick Chan does two beautiful quads, one in combination.
Agreed.
And then the rest of the program.
Well,
wow.
And you say the rest of the program. And I think that's really
3 minutes.
For me, that sums it up. You didn't say in the rest of the jumps. The program did suffer with it. Watching that program
Absolutely.
back, it was the entire program went downhill after that, and that wasn't reflected.
I think he has wonderful skating skills, just to start. I think he has great skating skills. I do think he can get a bit out of control. Like we saw after the quad, he's going into that Lutz, and he doesn't have himself...
On the cruise ship.
Well, yeah, because he goes so... And he looks a little out of control out of the landing, which is a problem with the construction of the program to begin with. But the fact that he's missing a triple Lutz after he just did two beautiful quads, and it looked like he wasn't physically, mentally, ready. He's flying into it. And to me, that's not great skating skills. When you can't control your power, to me, that's part of skating skills.
You have to control your edges, control what's going on the ice.
Control your body weight, moving, your edges, everything. And that's, to me, to see him get a 9.11, 9.11 for skating skills, after that, I was shocked. Not shocked because we've seen this happen before, but it was startling. Okay, his falls were bad falls. This wasn't a hand down. This wasn't one fall. A skating performance that's wonderful can survive one fall in the program, especially if it's the end. Usually it's not that big of a deal. It's still a great program. Oh man, in the old system, you would knock him down from a 6 to a 5.9. The problem with Patrick's marks that he received is that there was no little ding that happened, and it wasn't just one jump. Then he goes into, there were 4 errors in his program that were visible. Mm-hmm. You watch, one of them was a double, but you watch, he does the triple axel fall, and these were bad falls. Like he went on his back, Jenny Kirk. Like these were not small deductions. So to see him get these marks, I'm I don't understand. Maybe something has to be done. And it was wrong, I think, as a viewer. The person who helps us with Final Cut Pro watched it, tuned in because he was so excited. He's been part of the show and, tuned in and watched it. And he felt outraged by it.
Well,
and
he said, and I think this is so true. I don't mean to cut you off. He said, cut you off, that Patrick Train could have showed up, stood in the middle of the ice, eating a Snickers, and he still would have won. Like, basically, that's what it came down to. And I think my biggest gripe about this new system is when we look at this event, Dennis Tan did a magnificent short program. He was in second place. And I know a lot of the feedback that we got after the Nationals recap show when we talked about feeling outraged that Gracie didn't win the event was it's a two-part competition. If you bomb in the long, you shouldn't be able to win overall. Dennis didn't bomb. He skated magnificent short and a magnificent long. If you're in the top 3 after the short program and you win the long program, I think you should be able to win the entire event. That qualifies you as somebody who's been able to come to the event, show that you can skate these 2 different parts. I also think that there needs to be some sort of weight in terms of the long program. It still is 4.5 minutes for the men. It's a longer portion of the competition. That needs to be reflected in the mark. And we've had so many people on the skating message boards, also on Facebook, bloggers, saying, well, we need to tweak the math. Certain things need to be weighted more if you fall. What is your take on the math? Because the sport is so mathematical as it is. Tony Wheeler recently, I think it was this morning, he put out an article, or yesterday, talking about the men's event, saying we should add more math in. Do you think this is really the route we need to go? What would you do in terms of just scoring of events in skating?
I think that it's a huge problem. I look back at skating, and we made a mistake in the national program. We said that we didn't understand what was going on. We understand what was going on. We just, it's baffling.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, it's baffling that I can watch a skating event as a longtime viewer, someone who skates now, and I see what I see. And then you have to then watch and wait for the protocols to be posted. And then that's like that version of the event. If you want to look on, an Adobe PDF of what happened. And it's wrong. There's something that's going on. It's missing the viewers. It's like almost like the only people who are really into skating are Rain Man now, because it's really outrageous. And I think people talk about the math. Well, and I had a discussion with someone last night where, yes, we've been trained to now look for under rotations and edge calls like the Nazis. That is ruining the sport. The flutzing was ruining the sport, and the under rotations. Well, what about leg wraps? There's no deduction for leg wraps.
Mm-hmm.
Should there be a deduction for leg wraps? Should there be a deduction for using too much arms? How about tilt in the air? When does it end? And when is it just you see what you see and you judge what you judge? And with the replays and everything, I think it's alienating the viewers, drawing them out, and bringing us to Latvian television. And I honestly believe that. I know that PJ Kwong thinks, that frankly, like, there's so much social media support. Well, these are people that used to go to events, and they're a small fraction of what the general public is. The general public has forgotten about skating. It's not that they didn't even like it. It's that they might have tuned it off, and now it's so far out of the lexicon that it's gone.
Well, so. And the thing is, even, I think the problem, there's all backstories or whatnot, but I think one of the problems was that when it was on ABC before switching to NBC, and even on NBC or Universal now, is that when you're seeing the skater and the kiss and cry, we don't see that PDF as a viewer. We just see this number. We don't understand when somebody
like this.
Yeah, somebody like a Murakami skates a clean long program, but she gets, this is the ladies' event, but she gets, poor technical scores. You think, well, she didn't fall. What's going on? You don't see the under rotations. You don't see what's going on. So I think...
And I don't know that that's right for the viewer either, to have that come up. I think the viewer's going to be like, what?
What are all these things and these little carrots?
Can you imagine at the Olympics and everyone's watching and this pops up? I think maybe show the components on the bottom, but I think it's just a whole overhaul of the system. And if they're not going to go to 6.0, maybe a new system is really what needs to be in order. Because it's just
with less numbers, you would say.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think you see what you see, and that's that. Yeah, and going in talking about these components, there's always said that Patrick is superior. Well, he didn't have his best skate. And you're going to say that he's so much better than Dennis 10. Whatever. Dennis doesn't have the reputation of Patrick. I think he has good edges. I don't think they're Patrick's level, but Patrick wasn't perfect. Well, comparing, and that, you know what, there are 5 components. It's not just skating skills. And I think that people get a little bit, Christine Brenner talked about group thinking. Well, it's funny how the skating skills mark seems to be the only one that matters. Sometimes in the artistry that I don't see that people are really judging the interpretation and the choreography on a certain level. I personally feel that when I watch Patrick, it's someone who's studied to do these movements, and I don't get the sense from his soul like when I'm watching Daisuke Takahashi. Now it's funny because Patrick got 89.28 for components and Daisuke got 85 even. Patrick beat him in skating skills, whatever. You want to give him, a 9.11 to an 8.54. For skating skills, Patrick's better. You want to call it that? That's fine, whatever. I'll give you that. Transitions, they both have difficult programs. Again, you want to give Patrick harder transitions, fine. You know what? I think you could make a legitimate case for that. But when you go into the choreography and the interpretation, Patrick got a 9 for choreography, and Daisuke Takahashi got an 8.5. I view myself as one judge in the imaginary panel of life, and I don't know about you, but to me, the fact that he is beating him on choreography, I thought was ludicrous. I'm like, here's a person who has great edges. He has very good choreography. Not only do I think that Daisuke has better choreography, but he was judged as having somehow like half a point less than Chan. That gets doubled, so that's another point on, Patrick's inflated marks. And then the interpretation, I was watching Takahashi's program again and again. The last 90 seconds of it are so brilliant. Where he goes onto that forward edge and that glide and goes around in the circle, and then he's, coming to the spins, and it's so amazing. And to have Patrick get him a little bit higher in interpretation too, to me, I don't feel a soul connection of Patrick Chan. I don't feel that we're watching an artist. I think he's worked very hard to improve his presentation and to, connect more with his movements. But to me, I don't think he interpreted that program, and neither of them were clean. So I think it's really interesting to see the marks, what happened. What is your take on the artistic or whatever?
Well, yeah, and I think we have to move on to the other men, or else this is going to be a 4-hour show. Like, we could go back and forth about this. But I agree with you. I think skating is a subjective sport, but I would say that Takahashi is more of an artist on the ice. He does skate from his soul, skates from within. Patrick has beautiful edges. And I think one of the things that I do want to talk about, though, is when people, and I just see this with skating fans, when people are outraged by a result or feel like someone shouldn't win, I can speak for myself. It's not that we're saying that Chan's a bad guy or that we don't like him. I think this outrage is about when people are booing. It's more about the fact that the judges aren't doing their job or the direction that the sport is heading. And Patrick Chan, maybe he's a fine guy. I've never met him. Hopefully he's a nice guy. But I think people also have to understand that when there is such fervor and anger, it's not directed at Chan. And I've seen that this week where people will fight back and say, well, you don't like this skater, you don't like him. And I think it's not personal at all. Would you agree or disagree?
I agree. I think that some fans might not like Patrick's interviews, and they think that perhaps he's overconfident. He's been getting big marks for a long time, and he appears to believe that he deserves them, which is fine. That's his right. I think that some people are just outraged at the whole thing. They take it out on him. They don't like his interviews. He's also put in a difficult position in his interviews to kind of almost defend his win after, which is something that's really, I think, uncomfortable. And with him, it happens again and again and again. Right. So I think that's,
we're tired of it. But let's move on to some of the other men. Dennis Tan was such a surprise of this event. Nobody really, we watched him in the past, but he came out of nowhere for so many people, some people not even knowing about his skating recently paired up with Frank Carroll, and you could just see that in the technique, that linear technique. That's what I love so much. And his focus, it was so impressive to see somebody who's never been at this tip-top level keep it together for that long program, skating at the end of the event, and just the choreography. I love the short program. Usually arm flailing is not my thing, but I thought it worked for his short program, and just the technique on the axle and the quad were really superior. What did you think about his performances?
Well, I really think that Frank Carroll has done it again. He obviously, I think Dennis came to Frank Carroll after the 2010 Olympics. He was one of the few skaters that moved to work with Frank Carroll, and it's really starting to really work out for him. I think that obviously there's been a little bit of a technique change as Frank's way or no way, or really the highway. And I think that it's really working out for Dennis, and Frank's theory of skating is really working. It came down to perhaps the fact that he did a double flip double toe instead of a triple flip double toe later in the program, but I really don't feel that should have been the difference. I think that he had the performance really of the weekend when you add both programs together. And you talk about weighting, I do think that, the components, they do get factored, but there's something that's not clicking. And I don't know if falls need to be 2 points instead of 1 point. Is it going to be 2 points for a fall, 1 point for a hand down or a leg wrap? When you get into under rotation,
it's like percentage is what drives me crazy. Like times 0.12. I'm like, oh my gosh, where's my graphing calculator?
It's really dangerous. And I think that the fact that Dennis didn't win, you look at what happens, and like this would be great almost if it happened at the Olympics, because that could be true bottom. We think we're hitting bottom.
The press and the world attention.
Yeah. But at the same time, then that's future skaters who might not go into the rink. So I think at the same point, you have to kind of look at that, but skating may need to actually have what's happened and the absurdity.
Yeah. But
really
not to negate what Ten did, and I think that he we're talking about this event, he skated magnificently. He handled the pressure of being a newcomer in some sense to this top echelon, like I said earlier, really, really well, and I think that he's definitely a contender heading into Sochi. But the bronze medalist...
Your little crush.
During the short program, I was heartbroken to see him miss that triple axel, and I think that this event, it was just such an up and down in his free program, up and down event for him. He is a fighter, he fought to the end, but I think when he misses some of those jumps, that's when the weaknesses of his skating really come forward, that he doesn't have the skating skills of a Patrick Chan or a Dennis Ten. He is a little bit hunchy, his footwork, he didn't have that kind of excitement and zhuzh that he had at the European Championships, but nice to see him on the world podium, and those quads, when he lands them, you can't beat the flow in and out of those jumps.
Yeah, I definitely still see him. I thought he was going to pull it off this time. I still see him as a world champion of the future. And like Dennis Ten, he's not new to skating, but he is new to going for that world title. He's new for being in that position of perhaps winning the event. And I think it was actually a real testament to his competitive mindset and Brian Orser's coaching that he did come back in the long program and move up so much. And he didn't do a perfect long, but he did a very good long. And when he made a mistake on the first quad sow, he didn't let the program get away from him. He fought back on the second, and he really never gave up in that performance. And he wound up moving up and did a very good job. And I think that he's someone in the future that now that he has this experience of being at the top, again, it's another mental adjustment. But I do think that he's someone that we will see in the future. He's moving in the right direction. And I feel that he did a good program.
I do too. And another skater who came back, another Brian Orser skater who came back, Yuzuru Hanyu, that long program was phenomenal. Particularly, I think one of the surprises of the event for me was seeing him miss 2 jumps in the short program. It was shocking after he skated fairly clean short programs, or not clean, but good short programs, you should say, particularly at 4 continents, winning that short program there throughout the season. But having him come here and miss 2 elements in the short, obviously just mentally it must have been difficult for him to overcome that. But great long program. It was a little weird to see him so tired at the end. I was worried that he needed his inhaler, that something was going on. He was just exhausted, but I think it was that emotional release. But wonderful to see him come back.
Yeah, I think, not to pick on him at all, but stamina is an issue, and we hear that he has asthma. So it's always curious that you don't see the inhaler out, before or after the program. It's interesting because some skaters, when they have asthma, the inhaler has to be there. Either it has to be there for medical reasons or it's a crutch or whatever. And we don't see that, but we did hear that perhaps he was a little bit beat up. Perhaps he was also dealing with the flu. So I don't think he had the best approach to the World Championships, but the judges don't care when you compete at the Worlds. So, and I think that with him, he had a little, he had an under rotation on the quad sow. Mm-hmm. I think in the future, he has to figure out that stamina issue, whatever it is. I think they have to really look at what it is, because he's very thin, first of all. He's a very slight guy. So when you see someone like that running out of breath, you really worry for them.
Someone tweeted us he needs some iron. I could give him a steak, like something to get him through those last 2 minutes.
Something. He's a very slender person, and I think that it's just, you watch it and wow, and it's been a problem for him throughout the season with the long program. I mean, these programs are very, very difficult. He won a junior world title and was fine, but I think moving up, the program is a little bit.
Adding more quads to that program,
Yeah,
takes it out. But overall, would you say a strong competition for
yes,
him?
strong. I think he's about where he was last year. I don't know if he's gotten so much more experience this year. I don't know if his skating has really, if I see a marked difference. I think that, again, he's still in there for the Olympics and he needs to take that next step. And I think that, this was a telling championship for him. It was really wide open for him to be on the podium. It didn't happen. And it's something that they're going to have to address over the summer, coming so close. But again, great to see him come back in the long program. I think Brian Orser did a really good job with both Javier and Hanyu, getting them, to deliver in the long.
Yeah,
so I think
and
that
it's
was
all learning experiences heading into
yes.
an Olympic season. Another skater with learning experience, Kevin Reynolds from Canada. Third after the short, great short program, handling that pressure of skating on home ice so well. The long program had some under rotations. It seemed like he was tight. We saw it for continents. He skated with such attack and abandon, and he really wanted to win that event. And here, understandably, skating at the end of the flight, I think it just seemed like he tensed up a little bit. Those jumps didn't have the abandon. But he strikes me as I watch him. He's someone who kind of reminds me of Evan Lysacek in terms of he's that silent threat where I think he could really be the surprise next year. He seems like somebody who isn't like a Chan, as we talked about earlier, who isn't going to go out and self-promote. He seems more introspective, that he's going to kind of take this all in. This was a great experience for him, I think, and take it and use it next year. And he could really be that surprise medalist, I feel, at the Olympics next season. What do you think?
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him have under rotations, especially because he's done multiple quads for a long time and they've never been an issue. But I think, it's a little bit different for Kevin now. He won 4 continents. He really had the skate of the event at nationals. He didn't get the title, but, he had the skate there. He backed up at 4 continents, and perhaps mentally, I don't know if he was running out of gas as opposed to going for this. It's a little more pressure. He did sneak into the top 5. And I think that that's a real stepping point in his career, that he's now in a whole new group of men when you make that top 5 at Worlds. And I think that in the future, he is that silent threat. When you look, past Sochi, he's someone I do see him contending for all sorts of titles because of his ability. And he's really, he improved his components. I think that he looks to be trying to continually improve them. And I see him as a hard worker. I think, obviously, anyone who's doing multiple quads, I don't think that they're lazy in life. But I think that you get that sense that he really is focused and putting his all into this. And I think in the future, we've seen improvements, and I expect to see more from him.
Yeah, and I think he proved this season he is a fairly consistent competitor. So briefly touching upon 2 men before we head into the Americans, Daisuke Takahashi skated okay here. It's heartbreaking. I love his footwork. I can watch him do that footwork the entire competition. But we talked about it before the event. It seems like he's tired a bit, that his legs don't have that snap that they need on some of the quads. And it's heartbreaking because, again, he is a beautiful skater. What did you think?
Yeah, the Eurosport commentators referred to him as the most popular skater in the world in the men's event. And I do believe that. They even showed on Latvian TV, in between the ice breaks, we would see performances from exhibitions last year. And it was, really you really got to appreciate the beauty of his skating. I know that you tweeted about it at one point. And watching the end of his program to Pagliacci, it was magnificent. And it's so sad that I really do feel like his body is just breaking down. The snap of the jumps, there are these little under rotations, and under these rules, they're very unforgiving. And I think that it's really hurt him. I think, he was at the height of his career. He had a horrible injury that really probably prevented him from being the Olympic champion. And really, he was on the comeback trail as opposed to in the forefront. And last year, many people felt that he deserved to be the world champion. He, won the silver medal. And this year, people really were gunning for him to get that world title. And it looks like the body is just giving out a bit. But his program and his future in skating, I see him in shows for a very long, long time. I think that people will love to see him skate. He looks like he puts his soul into skating and absolutely loves to perform, excite the crowd, and really interpret music. And I loved watching him skate. He didn't have the best performance, but he was my favorite long program of the event, just because I think that, and he has a great new short as well to Moonlight Sonata, but I think that just watching that long program, I loved it. At the end, he's going on that edge and going into it's just, oh my God, it was just fantastic. And I think that that's really the heart of skating. And just, I would hope that the judges would reward him more for it, but that's life. But I really enjoyed his program. It's heartbreaking.
An heartbreaking competition, many would say, for Amodio as well. Missing that spin in the short program. It's hard to watch. Got up, did his little cha-cha, but it wasn't, I don't think, the world championship that he was hoping for coming here. And in a weird way, though, it was expected. He's not someone who really is known for his focus and for putting together two good programs in an event like this. What did you think about his performances?
Well, he had such a great season in 2011 when he, really skated a very fun program. Some people loved it, some people hated it, but he was really moving ahead in skating and making a real name for himself. And he had been, using the year before as a stepping stone. To me, it looks like he's kind of stumbled and wasted 2 years of his career. I know that he did some acting, and it's great to see someone get other opportunities, but you have to wonder if the focus is there, if the training is there, because he's someone with outrageous potential. Physically, he is
so much talent.
Raw talent. He has the good body for it. He has the right proportions. He's a good size. He's got good technique. But then you see, and it's lacking. And he's not pushing himself. He takes those breaks in his program, and he's stalling in his career. And I think what happened, it's not shocking. It's not shocking at all. And I think that we saw Felipe Candeloro come back in 98 after some seasons, but he had already been to the highest level. Mm-hmm. You can't really coast when you're trying to climb in the skating world. And I see that happening with him. And it's unfortunate, but it's, again, a learning experience. I mean, he's now had 2 years that really haven't panned out very well for him. And I think, what you put in is what you get out. So,
mm-hmm. Well, Max Aaron had a phenomenal first World Championship, skating 2 exceptional programs. What I like the most about his skating is that he has that killer instinct. I think he has what someone like a Jeremy Abbott lacks, and what U.S. men need is he's going to go out there. He can be like this in the air, and he will still land on his feet, tack on a double toe loop, and just keep going in the program. The performance components, not there, really not there at all. But the speed and the jumps, and it's an exciting performance, and you have to respect him as a competitor.
I love watching him in competition.
Me too.
He's not someone that I go back and watch. I don't, put his program on before bed at night and get inspired to get, good juju. But I think when I watch him, I have such a fun time. I laugh a bit because Max Aaron used to play hockey, and he kind of has those short forward crossovers. And before he goes around the corner, like you see him, and I'm like, "Where's the stick? Where's the puck?" Like it looks like that. Like you can tell, like you cannot take the hockey player out of him, and he goes into it like the way he does with his body.
He
like
attacks it though. That kid is I love it.
I love it. I think he's not artistic at all, and I don't care. Like it's so much fun to watch, and I really respect someone who puts it down like he did. And unfortunately, he did double the second quad. I would love to see him do 3 quads next year. I think he can do it, and I think he's the attack.
Yeah, and I think for next season, just finding a new choreographer, somebody, because I think he has a work ethic that he can bring out that artistry in his skating and work on some of those crossovers. And finally, Ross Minor, tough competition. He said after the event, and I want to know your opinion on this, that he felt distracted because his goal was to come in top 6, and he felt like maybe he had focused on that goal a little bit too much. What do you think about that, and what do you think about his performances?
Looking at the top men, I don't think that Ross Minor is a top 6 skater in the world. I think that the men's event, they're all very talented, and that's not picking on Ross. I don't think that his skating is there yet. I think that there are so many top men that to really put him in the top, I think, is unrealistic. And I think that if he thought that, I would be very curious if he discussed that with his coaches, that he wanted to be top 6. And I think someone needs to have a reality check. I also think that, Ross, he's not moving up in the skating world. He's kind of stayed right under the top 10 at, when he was at Worlds. And he's kind of not really progressing in that sport. He did have a medal in the Grand Prix this year when he skated his best and he skated well at nationals. But to me, I don't see his career progressing unless he makes some big changes. New coach, new choreographer, new mindset, because he's someone where he's not going to be top 6 in the world. You know, it would have to be quite the competition for Ross Minor to be in the top 6. And I think that, you know, he did good at nationals, but there needs to be a reality check there.
Yeah, and I think when we look at Junior Worlds that took place last month, the crop of men that are coming up, I worry that Ross may not even be top 6 at U.S. Nationals next year. I mean, that is a very real possibility. He needs to work on that technique. It's scary on the quad and the triple axel. But again, he seems like a very hard worker and somebody with, I believe, a coaching switch. I think he can bring his skating to the next level. So as we wrap things up at the men's event, Dave, I want to know, what was your number one takeaway of the event, good or bad, when you look back on it? I mean, I probably can predict your answer, but what would you, summing it all up, of this event?
Unfortunately, it all goes back to Patrick. I mean, just the number of emails, text messages, Facebook statuses, tweets that have happened. But I go back to Christina Gao's tweet that this was BS World 2013. She really made a name for herself and shocked a lot of people, and we've all fallen in love with her from that tweet. And I stand by that. I think it's unfortunate, but it happened. And you know, Patrick now has 2 out of his 3 world titles that are really dubious. And I think it's unfortunate, but it's not his fault, but it does say something about the state of the sport. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
I agree. BS Worlds 2013. Hopefully we've hit bottom, because I don't want to see what bottom would look like.
I know, it's like skating as Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah,
you know,
just like we keep going down and down. Like, let's make this bottom. Let's see some changes in the off season and come back for the Olympic year. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'd also like to thank Kevin Kwasniewski for our graphics. As always, you can email us, tweet us up, and we wanted to showcase these lovely and incredibly narcissistic mugs that Kevin Kwasniewski so gratefully grateful. We are so grateful. He was so selfless to make us these mugs and to send them, but it is cool on the one side. It says this.
I know, I want to scare some people at work with this. So
you should go ahead and be like the biggest D-bag ever. Anyway, thank you, Kevin. We love it, and there will be no more soda cans in our videos.
Yes. And as always, we'd like to remind you to hold an edge.
I love how you waited there. You were like, should I do it or should I? And look sexy, guys.
Look sexy.